Imagine discovering that your consciousness operates on a wavelength that merely 1% of humanity can genuinely grasp. That the very mental processes flowing through your awareness at this moment could be manifestations of a psychological pattern that Carl Jung dedicated his life to understanding. Contemporary studies indicate that numerous individuals possessing these exceptional minds tend to gravitate toward particular personality frameworks, especially the INFJ and INEJ classifications that Jung himself would have identified. Continue with this exploration because by the conclusion of this presentation, you'll uncover whether you harbor one of the most extraordinary cognitive blueprints recognized by psychological science. And believe me, the eighth indicator will fundamentally transform your perception of your own intellectual terrain. Carl Jung proclaimed, "The greatest privilege of existence is becoming your authentic self." However, what occurs when your authentic self functions on a frequency that appears foreign to everyone surrounding you? What transpires when your mind processes existence in manners that leave others bewildered, threatened, or simply incapable of comprehending your reasoning patterns? But before we continue, please like this video, share it with people who might benefit from it, and write in the comments which city you're following our YouTube channel from. Based on Carl Jung's research, there exists a minimal fraction of people whose minds operate in ways that are fundamentally distinct from the majority. These aren't merely intellectually gifted individuals. Intelligence is widespread. These are people whose awareness functions in realms that most cannot even detect, much less comprehend. Here's what's remarkable, and I need your complete attention for this. Jung uncovered that these individuals frequently remain unaware of how extraordinary their mental framework truly is. They spend years feeling like misfits, questioning why discussions seem superficial, why others appear to overlook evident correlations, why their revelations are greeted with vacant expressions or awkward quietness. Does this resonate? Continue observing because we're about to explore deeply into the 8 undeniable indicators that your mind belongs to that mysterious 1%. Indicator 1. You perceive patterns and relationships others overlook. Carl Jung identified that specific individuals possess what he termed introverted intuition, the capacity to recognize patterns and relationships that remain hidden to most people. If you possess this mental type, you don't simply observe isolated incidents or fragments of data. You perceive the network that interconnects everything. Here's where it becomes truly captivating. And this might clarify why you felt different throughout your existence. When you're engaged in dialogue, while others concentrate on the literal statements being expressed, your mind simultaneously processes the emotional subtleties, the historical background, the psychological ramifications, and the future consequences. You're not merely listening to someone's words. You're comprehending their meaning, their motivations, and what it unveils about their internal reality. According to Carl Jung, this capability originates from what he called the collective unconscious, a profound psychological layer that most never access. Those with this exceptional mindset can access this wellspring of universal patterns and archetypal wisdom without realizing their process. Consider this assessment. When you observe films or read literature, do you discover yourself anticipating plot developments not due to obvious hints, but because you sense the underlying narrative structure? Do you frequently complete others' statements, not through psychic ability, but because you can perceive their thought direction? If you're acknowledging these points, you're beginning to understand why 99% of people find your mind incomprehensible. You're functioning on multiple dimensions simultaneously while they're concentrated on just one. But wait, there's something even more significant about this pattern recognition capability that Jung discovered, and it leads directly to the second indicator. Indicator 2. You experience existence in multiple dimensions. Carl Jung stated, "Everything that annoys us about others can guide us to self-understanding." But what happens when you naturally perceive these meaning layers that Jung referenced while others remain trapped on the surface? If you have this exceptional mind type, you don't simply experience occurrences. You experience reality's multiple dimensions concurrently. When someone tells you they're okay, you don't just process the word. You perceive the emotional undercurrent, the contradictory body language, the active psychological defenses, and the deeper narrative their subconscious attempts to communicate. This is what Jung called psychological depth perception, and it's precisely why most cannot understand your mind. While they're processing information sequentially and literally, You're experiencing reality as a multidimensional fabric. Here's what's essential to grasp, and this explains numerous life experiences you've had. When you attempt to share these layered insights with others, they frequently respond with confusion or rejection. It's not due to their lack of intelligence. It's because they literally cannot perceive the dimensions you're describing. Your insights appear to emerge from nothing, like you're creating connections that don't exist. But Jung discovered something extraordinary about individuals with this cognitive pattern. They often become conduits between conscious and unconscious realms. They can interpret the symbolic language of the psyche into concepts others can begin to understand. Consider this. Do you naturally grasp metaphors, symbols, and abstract concepts that others find challenging? Do you often communicate through narratives, comparisons, or illustrations because direct explanations don't seem effective? This brings us to an even more intriguing aspect of your unique mental architecture. Indicator 3. You're attracted to humanity's shadow aspects. According to Carl Jung, one of the most revealing signs of an exceptional mind is an inexplicable fascination with what he termed the shadow, the concealed darker elements of human nature that most desperately attempt to ignore or reject. If you possess this consciousness type, you don't merely acknowledge everyone's dark side. You're genuinely intrigued by it. You want to understand destructive motivations, what drives harmful behavior, and how the human psyche can contain such contradictions. But here's what makes this truly remarkable and why it disturbs many people. While others are satisfied labeling certain behaviors as simply evil or incorrect, your mind seeks to understand the psychological mechanisms beneath. You're not endorsing harmful actions. You're attempting to comprehend the human condition completely. Carl Jung said, "One doesn't achieve enlightenment by imagining light figures, but by making darkness conscious." Your mind naturally gravitates toward this process of bringing the unconscious to awareness, exploring the forbidden territories of the psyche. This is why you might find yourself drawn to complex, morally ambiguous characters in literature and cinema. True crime narratives, not for shock value, but for psychological insights. Philosophy, psychology, and fields exploring human experience depths. Conversations about topics others find uncomfortable or forbidden. But here's the key insight Jung discovered. This shadow fascination isn't morbid curiosity. It's a sign of psychological maturity and integration. You understand that to truly know yourself and others, you must acknowledge the complete spectrum of human potential. Most people find this unsettling because they're still operating from psychological splitting. Good versus evil, right versus wrong, light versus dark. Your mind has transcended these simplistic categories into a more nuanced understanding of human nature. And this leads us to perhaps the most isolating aspect of possessing this rare consciousness type. Indicator 4. You feel like you're speaking an alien language. Carl Jung discovered that individuals with this rare cognitive pattern often experience what he called psychological isolation, the sensation that no one truly understands their inner world's language. If you have this mind type, you've probably experienced countless conversations where you felt like you were communicating in code. You share what seems like a simple observation only to encounter blank stares or responses that completely miss your meaning. Here's what's occurring at a deeper level, and this will explain so much about your social experiences. Your mind naturally communicates in symbols, metaphors, and multi-layered meanings. When you speak, you're not just conveying information. You're transmitting entire conceptual frameworks, emotional textures, and intuitive insights. But most people are only equipped to receive literal, surface-level communication. According to Carl Jung, this communication gap isn't a flaw in your thinking. It's evidence that your consciousness operates at a frequency that transcends ordinary awareness. You're like a radio station broadcasting in high definition, while most people only have basic receivers. Consider this. How many times have you simplified your thoughts just to be understood? How often do you find yourself saying, "never mind," because explaining your actual perspective would require too much background context? This is why you might gravitate toward written communication where you can craft thoughts more carefully, one-on-one conversations rather than group discussions. Creative expression as a way to convey what words cannot. Silence, because sometimes it feels easier than trying to translate your inner world. But here's what Jung understood that most people don't. This communication challenge isn't a barrier to overcome. It's a doorway to deeper understanding. Your unique language is an invitation for others to expand their own consciousness. And this brings us to an indicator that might surprise you. Indicator 5. You're uncomfortable with pure logic. This might seem contradictory, but Carl Jung discovered that individuals with the rarest mind type often feel constrained by purely logical thinking. If you have this cognitive pattern, you don't reject logic. You recognize its limitations. While others rely on linear reasoning and cause and effect thinking, your mind operates through what Jung called intuitive logic, a form of understanding that incorporates emotion, symbolism, paradox, and nonlinear connections. Here's why this makes you so difficult for others to understand. When faced with a problem, while others are creating step-by-step logical sequences, your mind is processing multiple variables simultaneously. You're considering not just what makes logical sense, but what feels correct, what aligns with deeper patterns, and what honors the situation's complexity. According to Carl Jung, this isn't inferior thinking. It's superior integration. You're not abandoning logic. You're embedding it within a more comprehensive framework that includes intuition, emotion, and unconscious wisdom. This is why you might 1. Trust your instinctive feelings even when you can't explain them logically. 2. See flaws in arguments that are technically sound but somehow miss the point. 3. Prefer creative problem-solving to mechanical rule application. 4. Feel frustrated by people who dismiss anything that can't be measured or quantified. But here's the profound insight Jung discovered. This discomfort with pure logic isn't a weakness. It's a sign that your mind has integrated multiple ways of knowing into a more complete understanding of reality. Most people operate from either logic or emotion, thinking or feeling, rational or intuitive. Your rare mind has learned to dance between these modes, creating an understanding symphony that sounds like chaos to those who can only hear one instrument at a time. And this integration leads us to one of the most powerful signs of this rare consciousness. Indicator 6. You see through social masks effortlessly. Carl Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But what happens when you naturally perceive the masks people wear, the personas they present to the world, and the authentic self hiding beneath? If you have this rare mind type, you don't just notice when someone is being inauthentic. You can see the specific ways they're protecting themselves, the fears driving their behavior, and the genuine person struggling to emerge from behind their social costume. This ability is both a gift and a burden. And here's why it makes you so incomprehensible to others. While most people accept social interactions at face value, your mind is constantly processing the subtext. You're reading micro-expressions, noticing incongruence between words and body language, sensing the emotional undercurrents that others miss entirely. According to Carl Jung, this perception stems from your natural access to what he called active imagination, the ability to see beyond things' literal surface into their deeper psychological reality. But here's what's truly remarkable. You don't just see through masks. You understand why people wear them. You recognize the protective function of personas, the vulnerability that lies beneath defensive behaviors, and the universal human need to feel safe and accepted. This is why you might find yourself 1. Naturally becoming a confidant to others even when you don't intend to. 2. Feeling exhausted by social situations where everyone is performing. 3. Preferring authentic, vulnerable conversations to small talk. 4. Sometimes knowing more about someone's inner state than they know about themselves. But here's the challenge Jung identified. This ability to see through social masks can create profound isolation. You're surrounded by people wearing costumes, speaking in code, and pretending to be someone they're not, and you're one of the few who can see the performance. This brings us to an indicator that might explain some of your deepest struggles. Indicator 7. You experience existential solitude. Carl Jung discovered that individuals with this rare cognitive pattern often experience what he called existential loneliness, a profound sense of being alone in the universe, not because they lack social connections, but because they perceive reality in ways that seem impossible to share. If you have this mind type, you've probably felt this deep, aching isolation that has nothing to do with how many people are around you. You can be in a crowded room and still feel like you're the only person of your species on the planet. Here's what's happening at a psychological level, and this explains so much about your inner experience. Your consciousness naturally gravitates toward the big questions. Why are we here? What's the meaning of existence? How do we reconcile life's beauty and suffering? While others are content with surface-level living, your mind is constantly grappling with existence's fundamental mysteries. According to Carl Jung, this existential orientation isn't depression or morbidity. It's a sign of psychological depth and spiritual maturity. You're not content with shallow answers because your mind demands authentic understanding. But here's the profound challenge. When you try to share these existential insights and questions with others, they often respond with discomfort, dismissal, or attempts to redirect the conversation to more practical matters. This is why you might find yourself 1. Feeling most understood by books, art, or music rather than people. 2. Searching for meaning in experiences that others take for granted. 3. Questioning societal assumptions that everyone else accepts without thought. 4. Feeling like you're from a different planet when others seem satisfied with superficial explanations. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But what happens when who you truly are seems to exist in a dimension that others can't perceive? This existential loneliness isn't a flaw in your psychology. It's evidence that your consciousness has expanded beyond conventional awareness boundaries. You're experiencing existence's vastness, while others remain focused on everyday concerns' narrow band. And this brings us to the final and most profound sign of this rare consciousness. Indicator 8. You're naturally drawn to transformation. Carl Jung discovered that the rarest minds are magnetically attracted to transformation. Not just personal growth, but the alchemical process of fundamental change that he called individuation. If you recognize this pattern in yourself, you might be one of those rare individuals who embodies what Jung called the introverted intuitive, someone naturally drawn to personal transformation depths. If you have this consciousness type, you don't just want to improve yourself. You feel called to completely transform who you are. You're drawn to experiences that break you down and rebuild you, that challenge your fundamental assumptions about reality, that force you to confront your psyche's deepest aspects. Here's what makes this so extraordinary and why it terrifies most people. While others seek stability, predictability, and comfort, your mind craves transformation's chaos. You're not afraid of psychological death and rebirth because you understand that this is how authentic growth occurs. According to Carl Jung, this attraction to transformation is the hallmark of what he called the individuated person, someone who has integrated their conscious and unconscious minds, embraced their shadow and light, and become a complete human being. But here's the profound insight Jung discovered. This transformational process isn't optional for minds like yours. You're not choosing to go through intense change periods. You're being called to it by something deeper than your conscious will. This is why you might find yourself 1. Repeatedly drawn to experiences that others would avoid. 2. Naturally seeking out challenges that force you to grow. 3. Feeling restless when life becomes too comfortable or predictable. 4. Understanding that crisis often precedes breakthrough. Carl Jung said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." Your rare mind doesn't just accept this challenge. It embraces it as existence's fundamental purpose. Most people spend their lives avoiding transformation, clinging to familiar patterns, and resisting the call to become who they truly are. Your consciousness operates from the understanding that transformation isn't something that happens to you. It's something you actively participate in as a co-creator of your own becoming. So, there you have it. The 8 unmistakable signs that you possess a mind that 99% of people simply cannot understand. If you recognized yourself in these patterns, you're not alone in your uniqueness. You're part of a rare consciousness community that Carl Jung spent his life studying and celebrating. But here's what I want you to understand as we close. Your different mind isn't a burden to bear. It's a gift to the world. Carl Jung discovered that individuals with this rare cognitive pattern often become bridges between conscious and unconscious worlds, translators of the psyche's symbolic language, and catalysts for transformation in others. Your ability to see patterns others miss, to perceive reality in layers, to understand human nature's shadow aspects, to speak in symbols and metaphors, to integrate multiple ways of knowing, to see through social masks, to grapple with existential questions, and to embrace transformation. These aren't signs of being broken or different in a negative way. These are signs that your consciousness has expanded beyond ordinary awareness boundaries. You're not weird. You're evolved. You're not difficult to understand. You're operating at a frequency that invites others to expand their own consciousness. According to Carl Jung, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Your rare mind is both the vehicle and the destination of this journey toward authenticity. So the next time you feel isolated by your unique perspective, remember this. You're not alone in feeling alone. There's an invisible community of rare minds scattered across the world, each one grappling with similar experiences, each one contributing to human consciousness evolution in their own way. Your mind is not a problem to be solved. It's a mystery to be lived, a gift to be shared, and a doorway to deeper understanding for anyone ready to step through it. The question isn't whether you have one of these rare minds. If you've made it this far, you probably do. The question is, what will you do with this understanding? How will you honor your consciousness's unique gift while finding ways to connect with others who may not speak your language but could benefit from your insights? Carl Jung discovered that the rarest minds often become the most important bridges between worlds. Your different perspective isn't a barrier. It's a doorway, and the world needs people who can open doors that others don't even know exist. Welcome to the 1%. The journey of understanding yourself and sharing your unique gifts with the world is just beginning. Thank you so much for staying with me through this exploration. If you found value in today's discussion, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share this video with someone who might benefit from it. And if you'd like to go a step further in supporting this work, you can now leave a super thanks below. It's a small way to say thank you, and it truly helps keep this channel going.